Hello, Dr. Yelamisa.
Can't now. Hello, ma.
Yes, sir. I'm online, sir.
Yeah, you can share your slide.
All right, sir.
You are the co-host already.
Okay. The YouTube link in Kosa.
Yeah, it's ready. They are there already.
Okay, sir. Mi ò rí link yẹn ni mo fẹ́ send ẹ̀ sáwọn management sciences. Mi ò rí yẹn ni mo fẹ́ send ẹ̀ sáwọn So good morning, class. So I want to be sure you can see my screen.
Hello, they can see it. It's showing already. Your screen is showing.
All right. So the course outline, can we see it clearly? Sir, so I will want us to have it at the back of our mind that so far with Dr. Ajite, we've been able to cover topic 1, where it taught us on the nature of economic science, and to some other things that we looked at under topic 1, definition and scope of economics, basic economic problem, that of scarcity and choice, then economic agents. We looked at consumers, firms, and government, then opportunity cost and trade-off. Some of these concepts, he was able to discuss them extensively in the first class. Then in the second topic, methodology of economics, he looked at positive versus normative economics, microeconomics versus macro, role of assumption and economic modeling. Then lastly, he looked at economic tools of graphs, mathematical models, and empirical models. Then in the third one, he looked at major areas of specialization in economics. We looked at development economics, international economics, energy and environmental economics. Then lastly, he looked at institutional economics. Then for the the fourth topic that he took last week, I know he discussed on historical developments in economic thoughts. And by that, he looked at so let's continue. I want to make sure we have this class. All right. So for the fourth topic he took last week, he looked at historical development of economic thoughts. And he looked at the classical economics examples of Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus. Then he looked at neoclassical economics, Alfred Marshall, Leon Walras. Then he looked at utilitarianism, and key under that is Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Then finally, he looked at welfare economics by considering the work of little contribution from Arthur Gigo and Vilfredo Pareto. So, and I know that after these classes, he sent the material used to the class. So for the fifth topic, we have the topics we have outstanding. We will look at topic 5. We still have 6, 7, and 8. So when you have this course outline later, I don't know whether you already have it, and we have some recommended texts in the outline too that you can refer to for further reading. So for this morning, we will look at topic 5. We will see how far it is quite broad, but we will try to cover as much as we can under topic 5, and that is demand and supply analysis. I believe it is a familiar ground, and some of us that have done economics in our O level have this already at the back of our mind, but we are taking, we have 5 subtopics under each. Laws of demand and supply, we'll be taking them together. Then determinants of demand and supply, types of demand and supply. Then we'll look at market equilibrium and all that. So some other things may not be all that obvious in this outline, but some of it we'll still talk about them. We will mention them as the class moves on. So for the laws of supply, I would want to share a particular material with you, not in form of slide, but it's a note and it's quite explanatory. So for the law of supply, I will want us to have like a background idea on what we are talking about. For instance, the theory of demand, the theory of supply, they are both combined under what we refer to as the price system. And what do we mean by the price system? The price system simply means this material, I will just want to talk to this material. If you can see the screen clearly. In order for goods and services produced to yield profit to the producers, as well as meet the satisfaction of consumers, they ought to command a price that determines the value at which they are sold and bought. So the price system, therefore, is the channel through which monetary values of goods and services are determined, especially through the interplay of demand and supply. So anytime you hear the word the price system, what is facing the consumers as the price they pay for goods and services It's also talking about what is facing the producers in determining the prices or the value of goods they produced and the services they provide. Now, for this, we will try to explain the concept of demand, state the laws of demand, indicate the behavior of the demand curves, identify the factors that influence demand for commodities, identify and distinguish between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. And for this concept, we will try to see how we can take it concurrently with that of supply, because we may not have that enough time to go. I will not want to separate it, but we will quickly take it concurrently. And I will advise that if it is possible, you can have your own notes and jots. And in the chat, apart from putting in our our matric numbers and our details, I will advise that we should, maybe if you want us to clarify on one or two things, you can ask in the chat. I will not want anyone to disturb the class with questions and or muting their mic. So for this concept, let's just quickly look at the concept of demand as one key concept. We may not necessarily go by what we have in the course outline, because I told you that some aspects of this topic may be missing. And some of these other aspects that we will identify, we may not take them in detail. So I will likely ask you to read up some things on your own, maybe refer back to your O-level notes or textbooks. It will help. It's because some of the things that you have learned in your O-level are still very much relevant here. So I always like to hear from one or two of you, but because I will not want the class to be noisy or interruption from one or two people, but I can look through the participants and call on anyone just to be sure that we are together. So like I said, it is a familiar ground, and as a concept, it is defined as the quantity of goods and services which a consumer is willing to buy in addition to the ability to pay at a particular time. Now, there is a third concept that I usually introduce. So I usually had willingness, apart from willingness, ability, then readiness. Someone may be willing and may not be ready. Someone may have that ability and may not be willing. So there is this third concept of readiness that we usually include. So when we have willingness, ability, and readiness, then we talk about effective demand. So if you are jotting down, differentiate between effective and non-effective demand, or what we call ineffective demand. These two concepts, they are part of the things that we will want us to be familiar with. So anytime we define the concept of demand as the quantity that a consumer is willing, able, and ready to buy at given price and at a particular time, we are indirectly talking about effective demand. Effective demand. So what is effective demand? It is that concept, that definition that we are familiar with when we have those three concepts that are there. But ineffective is when any of these three concepts is missing. So when we say ineffective, it simply means even though it is demand, the consumer may be willing, but ability may not be there. And indirectly, it simply means that the consumer may not want to, the consumer may not want to, may not be able to pursue it in the interim or immediately, simply because the ability to pay for it is not there. And indirectly, once the ability to pay is not there, then definitely the consumer may not be ready, because ability is what will instigate readiness. So, however, whether demand is effective or not is greatly determined by the prices of goods and services in the market. So what this simply means is that the willingness may always be there. In most cases, whether we are talking about effective or non-effective. But the moment the price increases, or the moment there is a change in price, it would affect whether the consumer is willing, well, it will affect whether there will be willingness or non-willingness, or effective or non-effective. So oftentimes, we have effective demand change whenever there is a change in price. So any effective demand may change to ineffective whenever there is a change in the market price of commodity. So if you are looking at the screen, when we ask that you should differentiate between effective and ineffective, I usually ask my students that, is there any of these three concepts of willingness, ability, and readiness that should always be there? And the absence of any of this, then definitely demand will be ineffective. And automatically we know that willingness can be there, but obviously once there is no ability, definitely it can't be effective. So the absence of ability automatically makes it ineffective. So by that, we look at this concept when we are looking at the laws of demand and laws of supply. I will want to quickly explain the concept of supply so that we can have it concurrently. Like I said earlier, before we look at the law, let's quickly look at what do we mean by the concept of supply. For a typical consumer, the concept of demand is applicable to a typical consumer, someone that wants to buy at a given price and at a particular time. And that is the demander, and that is on the consumer side. But when we look at who are those that are making the goods available, who are those that make it accessible to the consumers, then we are talking about the producers, the suppliers. And in oftentimes when we look at the concept of supply, the concept of supply simply means the quantity that a supplier or a producer is willing, able, and ready to supply at going prices and at a particular time. So it is just the other arm. So when we look at under this now, I would just want us to quickly identify, just like we said under the theory of demand. The other side is the supply that comes under the supplier or the producer side. No, now as is indicated here, the theory of supply looks at the manner through which goods and services are produced and supplied in line with the interplay of their prices and some other factors that determine their extent. As demand is on the consumer side, the supply is on the producer or the supplier side. So we look at what do we mean by the components of this theory of supply, and then the law, as well as the types and all other things that we will look at. So for this concept of supply, like I said, there is the need for us to explain that as far as the supply concept of supply is concerned, it simply means quantity of a given commodity or service that a producer is willing and able and at the same time ready to offer for sale at a given or going price and at a particular time. Now, when we look at the laws, I will call back, sir. And when we look at the laws, the law of demand on the consumer side is, we have it separated into two. Now, why do we have this separation into two? Oftentimes, we'll call it first law and the second law. When all things are normal, when you consider logical ways through which people view things, we say the first law of demand, people follow it, they obey it. And what do we mean by the first law? It simply states that when the price is high, the quantity that will be demanded will be low. And once the price is low, the quantity that will be demanded will be high. So stating it as we have it on the slide, the law of demand states that the higher the price of a commodity, the lower the quantity demanded, while the lower the price of a commodity, the higher, while the lower the price of a commodity, the higher the quantity demanded, ceteris paribus. So this concept of ceteris paribus simply means all things being equal. All things being equal. Now, ceteris paribus, it's pointing to the fact that if we are going by the first law of demand and we expect that quantity demanded should comply to price change in the way we expect it to be, then obviously or definitely we will have situation where some other things apart from the price may want to influence this behavior. And most times, these other things, they are things that are not negligible. But because we want this first law of demand to apply, we are saying that we should hold all other things constant. Hold all other things. And then once you do that, then definitely you allow only the price to be the one that will influence demand. So what do we mean by that? The major thing about the first law is that you hold every other thing and you consider price. Now, this first law, this is the first law, and it basically states that the amount of goods demanded increases with a fall in price and decreases with a rise in price, which shows inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So whenever we are looking at this inverse relationship, that is the normal demand curve or normal demand schedule. Like I have it here in a table, in a schedule form. So when we ask what is a demand schedule, it's a table that shows the relationship between the given price and the quantity demanded at that price. So, like I explained here, the Latin word ceteris paribus simply means all other things being equal. The implication of this is that price is seen as the major factor that affects quantity demanded. Under normal circumstances, it is expected that when price is low, people buy more. So, which is why that ceteris paribus is applicable. But on a good day, whenever we consider the fact that you want to show this relationship, we have what we call a demand schedule. So a normal demand schedule is what I have here. What I have here. For a normal demand schedule, we have price, the lowest price at 250 and the highest quantity at that lowest price. But we have the highest price at 500 naira and the lowest quantity at that 500 naira, which simply means as the price is increasing from 250 to 300 to 500, the quantity declines. So when the price of the tuber of yam was 250, 8 tubers were bought. But as price increases, then lesser quantities were bought. And at the highest price of 500, we had only one. Now, when you look at this behavior, you see that when you want to indicate it on a graph, looking at this graph here, we have a graph that once the price is high at 500 naira here, we have it associated with the lowest quantity. And as the price was 450, we have it associated with 2. Then if you look at price 250, you will see that that is associated. So for every point on this, for every point on this demand curve, it is downward sloping, but it indicates that we have high price, low quantity. We have low price, we have high quantity. So if you are asked at what point or how do we justify the downward sloping demand curve, it simply shows that it slopes from the left to the right, indicating that once the price is high, quantity is low, and once the price is low, quantity is high. So this point here is associated with higher quantity. Now, a typical demand curve behaves in this way. I will want to quickly go to the supply concept. Now, what the backing behind the first law of demand is that it is expected that people are logical and that whatever amount of money you have at your disposal, you consider how much of the commodities in front of you, how much of it you can buy. And whenever we consider this type of behavior, we see situations where whenever we consider this type of behavior, we see situations where even though it could be 500 naira, we have people that will always want to buy even more than one. But the assumption is that once the price is high, there is tendency that you may not be able to buy much. So which is why we said that for this hypothetical data we have here, we said that the highest price you can only buy one. But between me and you, we know that even at the highest price, some set of people could go for more than one. It depends on the size of their income and how much budget they have earmarked for what they are buying. So far, I want to be sure that you can hear me and that you can see my screen before I quickly explain the law of supply. So can I have response from the class if you can hear me and see the screen clearly before we move on? If you can unmute yourself, you can. Or if it is in the chat, if you can hear me clearly, I will want you to put it in the chat that you can hear me clearly. I'm waiting for response from the chat. All right, thank you. And you can see the screen clearly. Thank you. So those that keep coming in, admitting them is disturbing our class. I may not admit anymore because this is almost 30 minutes into the class. So let's quickly see the law of supply. Now, for the law of supply, it states that the higher the price of a commodity, the higher the quantity supplied. While the lower the price of a commodity, the lower the quantity supplied, ceteris paribus. Now, if I ask this word, this Latin word, ceteris paribus, simply means you are only allowing price to be the one that will determine what you demand and what you supply. Every other things affect it. So contrary to the law of demand, this basically states that the amount of goods supplied, increase with a rise in price and decrease with a fall in price, which shows a direct relationship between price and quantity supply. So what do we mean by direct relationship? In direct relationship simply means price goes this way, quantity supplied also goes the same way. So if price goes down, what is expected of quantity supply, it also goes down. Now, there is a logical explanation behind this behavior. It is expected that producers or suppliers are always encouraged to produce more once they know that it attracts high prices. For instance, higher prices would likely increase your revenue if you increase this quantity you are supplying. And you know that the prices are already given. And then if it is high, once the prices are high, then obviously you will be encouraged to supply more. Now, this relationship will be established through the tendency from the tendency that higher cost for producing more commodities, you incur more cost in producing more commodities, and incurring more cost simply means that you want to at least cover your cost with selling at higher prices. So this is why we said that the incentives of higher prices would motivate producers to supply more so as to increase their profit. Now, like we had demand schedule, we also have supply schedule. So if you are asked from the economics tools that are normally adopted, the ones that we have taken, I think in topic 2 or topic 3, from that we know that tables is one key tool that economics usually use in explaining some concepts. So like we have demand schedule, we also have supply schedule. And what do we mean by supply schedule? It is a table that is showing the relationship between price and quantity. Now, for this supply schedule, it's showing the relationship between price of goods and quantity supply. Now, for the quantity supply, we have situation where for this quantity supply, we have situation where people are always motivated to produce more at higher prices. So this direct relationship simply means that once the price is low, you have the lowest quantity supplied. And going by this, we have as the price is increasing, the quantity supply is also increasing. And like I said earlier, it obviously have direct relationship between price and quantity supply. So when they are going in the same direction, like we have it in this table, that the highest price is associated with the what? The highest quantity. So This, when we show this in the graphical form, and you know, one of the key instruments too, one of the key tools for economic analysis is the what? Is the graphs apart from tables. We have our charts and different types of charts to explain relationship. But when we have only two variables, it is easier to use graphs. We also use graphs to explain two or three more variables, but we have more complex graphs in that situation. So for this now, what do we have? We have highest price, highest quantity. Highest price associated with the highest quantity. And as the price is reducing, we have situation where we have a situation where we have the price decreasing, and as the price is decreasing, suppliers are reducing or reducing this quantity supply. So when you look at the lowest price here, is associated with the lowest quantity. As the price increased to 25, we have higher quantity supply, and on and on. So when you look at this behavior, the curve, the behavior of this curve, you see that it is going in the upward slopey form. So it slopes upward from left to the right. Slopes upward from left to the right. So we have some assessment question. What is the rationale for the upward sloping supply curve? The rationale I've already answered that there is tendency for suppliers, they want to increase the quantity supply once they know that it is fetching higher prices. So why does the curve slope upward? It simply means that they have a situation where you could supply more, and then when the price is high. So we have the factors that influence demand, the factors that influence supply. So let's quickly look at that of demand. But before we look at that of demand, of supply, before we look at the factors, I want us to have it at the back of our mind that there are times, several times, that the law of supply may not follow the ceteris paribus slogan. And why will it not follow it? We have situation where you expect that people will have their behavior going in the way of inverse relationship, but we have a demand curve that is upward sloping like a supply curve. And the reason for that is because you have abnormal situation that is explained with abnormal demand law or abnormal law of demand, or what we usually call exceptional law to the demand, or what we also refer to as the second law of demand. In this case, the law is such that the higher the price, the higher the quantity demanded, and the lower the price, the lower the quantity demanded. Now, once the price is going high and you are saying higher quantity demanded, it simply tells you that there are some types of goods by their nature, even though the price is high, what the consumers are doing is that they do what? They are demanding more. And the another situation where you have lower prices. So in the situation where we have the lower demand, lower prices, what it simply means is that obviously for some people, even though the prices are cheap, they are still demanding for lower quantity. And in such cases, we have examples. So in our charts, I want us to quickly put in examples of goods that exhibit lower quantity once the price is low, and higher quantity once the price is high. We have typical examples, and I'm sure some of us are familiar with that. As we move on with the class, you can still put it up in the chat. I will check it in the chat later. So for this abnormal demand curve or the second law, it has an upward sloping. So if you have a question, if you are asked what is the rationale behind the law of demand, the first law of demand obeys the normal demand curve. But the second law of demand or the abnormal circumstances makes it otherwise. So let's quickly see I want us to quickly see, before we look at the factors that influence both demand and supply, I want us to quickly look at our outline to see which one we missed out. That's the first one, laws of demand and supply. So we have been able to cover that now, laws of demand and supply. I will ask you if you have any question on this before we move on to the second subtopic, the determinants or the factors. If you have any question on the laws of demand and supply, you can ask now before we continue. So if you are raising up your hand, the best way is raise up your hand, then I will ask you to unmute. And in the chat, let me quickly see any response to my question earlier. Luxurious good, giving good. Thank you. Thanks for the response. So for the luxurious group goods, what happens? The prices are high. People are still going for them. For the given good or cheap, when the prices are low, now that's given good is named after the person that tried to explain why people behave in such way. So some call them inferior goods, but once you call it given simply means that is the name of the person that tries to explain why such Glory Okechukwu, if you can talk.
Good morning, ma.
Glory Okechukwu, yeah, I'm listening.
Yes, ma. Good morning, ma.
Yeah.
Ma, I want to ask if we also have abnormal law of supply.
Yes, we have situation where in some cases we could have abnormal law of supply when you expect that the price is low, you expect suppliers to supply low, but they still want. It depends on their revenue goal or what they want to target for their revenue. So in some cases we could have, it is expected rational behavior or logical behavior of suppliers. We expect them to conform to that. But in some situations, if they want to increase their revenue, even though it's going at lower prices, they could supply if they have a high market share. And what do we mean by market share? It simply means A is supplying, B is supplying, and you also have that room to supply some quantity to the market. So if your market share is quite on the high side, there is that tendency that even though it is fetching low price, you still want to supply as much as possible. Though you were not encouraged with the low price, but because you know that if you sell large quantity, you could recover some at least higher level of revenue. So that could lead in some cases to abnormal supply curve. Tiami, you can unmute yourself now and ask.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So I want to ask that the demand, does it slope downwards from left to right also? You said supply slope upward from left to right.
Supply slopes upward from left to the right. Demand slopes downward from left to the right.
Okay,
So you
ma'am.
should be
Thank you.
mindful. You should be mindful when we are talking about change in demand, change in supply. When we get to that aspect, please, you should be mindful of where the left to the right. You should be mindful of which direction. It depends on how you are, which direction you are talking or you are coming from. Somebody is still raising up a hand. Omileye. Yeah.
Hello, ma. Good,
Yeah.
good morning, ma.
Yeah.
Hello, ma.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, ma. What is goods of ostentation? Goods of
Ostentation is
necessity?
another way of saying luxurious good, but not necessarily luxurious. Ostentation simply means those goods that, luxurious, you can still say that you are comfortable, You are maybe enjoying life, from the word luxury, luxurious living. But ostentatious is another way of trying to describe, even though at times they may not be necessary. At times you can still do without them, but because you want to showcase status and some other reasons that could be behind it. So ostentatious is like the higher level of luxurious goods. Esther, we are listening. And after Esther, well, let's leave the question till later. Let's move on with the second subtopic. Esther, is Esther still talking? All right, it's like Esther is not yet ready. Now let's quickly look at the determinants of demand and supply. And by that, by determinants, what you are familiar with, you are familiar with is when we say factors that influence. So some of these factors, we are familiar with them. For the determinants of demand, I will want us to quickly put it up in the charts. Let's see which one we are missing out. Then we will quickly, then let's see which one is missed out. Then I will know which one to add. So what are the factors that influence demand? Factors that influence demand. Let's quickly put it. Okay, income, price. Income, price. Thank you. Population, the number of people. Yeah, taste, stroke, preference, weather conditions, consumer taste. So at times you call it taste, stroke, preference. Now for these determinants, thank you for your responses. Thank you. Now for these determinants, I want us to quickly look at the way I explain it there in here on this. So some of these responses, we already have it here. Now, if you are looking at my screen clearly, you will see that apart from the price of the commodity itself, we have prices of related commodities. Prices of related commodities is another determinant of demand. And if you are seeing the explanation there, the related commodity simply means apart from the commodity you are demanding for on its own, we have some other that are related to it. And the relationship could be either a substitute for it or a complement that you have to use with it. So now related goods and their prices also have influence on demand and maybe at times on the quantity demanded, but we will explain that further when we have when we are taking elasticity. Now for the income level of consumer, somebody already mentioned that, but some of the justification when you have this slide, you quickly see how do we justify each of these factors. And indirectly, if we are saying justification, it simply means that if you say income level, how do you expect demand to respond to income? It simply means when one's income is low, you don't expect people to demand much of a particular commodity. And at another time, once income is low, you expect some certain types of commodity. You expect some certain type of commodity to be demanded because income is low. For instance, when we say inferior, those are the type of goods that people that are of income, low income, those are the type that you expect them to go for. So most time it is affected. I'm not admitting people in again. So they will just continue to wait in the waiting room because it keeps coming up and popping up. So like I said, if we are to go by justification, we try to explain how each of these factors. So I will quickly want us to note down, if you are noting somewhere, when we say taste or preferences, what is the difference between the two? They are not exactly the same meaning. But what is the difference and how do you justify taste or preference how do you justify its influence on demand? If I ask a person that is just earning, maybe that is just earning a medium income or an average income, you could have particular taste or you could have preference for some certain types of food, but once your income level change from being average to maybe you are now earning more or whatever, it could indirectly influence or affect your taste or your preference. You could see yourself going for some type of goods rather than the one you used to go for. So taste or preference, you justify it by the kind of goods or services that a person will favor, the type of goods or services that you will tend or bend towards as your taste or preference change. So somebody already mentioned population. Some people mentioned, I think, government policy, weather condition. Those are not here. So you can add it as you are adding to your notes, weather condition, government policy. So that we have more. We have 5 in this slide, but you definitely have more. So these factors can be expressed in form of what we call a demand function. Now, what is a demand function? Let me quickly just explain what we mean by a demand function. From what we have here, when you try to show the relationship between the quantity demanded and the factors that influence it, and you show it in a mathematical form or in a model form, that is what we refer to as a demand function. When we took the economic analysis, the tools that are used for economic analysis, some of these things were already mentioned here. Now, so when we have already mentioned mathematical models, and we said, I think Dr. Ajide said it then, that we could have a situation where we could have more complex models that try to explain economic relationship. Depending on the types of relationship you are trying to portray, then it will determine which type of function or which type of model or which type of equation you are using. So for a typical demand function, we talk about a mathematical expression of the relationship between quantity demanded and the factors that influence that demand. Now, if you look at this, we have quantity demanded as a function of all this. We have price of the commodity itself, price of related commodities, number of people or the size of the population that are consuming, then the taste or preference of the consumers, then we have the income of the consumers. Now, all these, we just represent them with arbitrary letters. They are all factors. Note that price PR stands for prices of related commodities. So which could either be a substitute or a complement to the, so what is a demand function? You have answer to that. Now, beyond this demand function, there are other ways of expressing a demand function. It could not be in functional form, it could be in a model form. And by model, you try to show, a model will tell you a typical demand function. Sorry, let me just say, there is another material that I will still send to the class showing other types of demand function that could be expressed in a model form. It could be exponential way or different types of model depending on the type of relationship you are trying to. For this one now, it may not tell you the direction of the quantity demanded, because you just know that the price of the commodity itself affects demand, prices of related commodity affect demand, number of population and all that. So, but we have situation where some other things too affect, some other function or model, you use it to portray a demand function. So we will still show that. Let's quickly look at the supply side apart from the demand one. Factors influencing supply. Factors influencing supply. I will I will still look at the charts. Let's quickly respond to that. We have factors influencing supply. Okay, somebody mentioned taxation. Thank you for that. That taxation still comes under government policy. So government policy can be in form of government expenditure, government taxes, government subsidies, and some other key elements that government try to use. So taxation is one of the government policy that could influence demand. It could also be maybe outright banning of a particular commodity. It will influence the demand for it, and also so those other things. So any government policy that is brought up, it comes under, somebody said advertising, so it can also be part of it, but they are not, most time they are not direct factors as such. They could determine demand, but they may not stand directly as direct factors that influence demand. So I will want response now on that of supply, determinants of supply. Now, for that of supply, let's see the response. Cost of production, level of technology, yeah. Government policy also come under that too. Price of the goods itself, yeah. Cost of production. So somebody that says changing cost of production, it also comes. Somebody that says raw materials, it also comes under the cost of the materials that are needed or the resources that are required for supply. So thank you. Number of producers, thank you. Price of other related commodities. So let's see what we have in our material here. So if you are seeing my screen, we have factors influencing. One key one is the cost, is the price of the commodity itself. And then we have the cost of production. And by cost of production, as I said, those people that mentioned raw materials, that mentioned the changing costs incurred and all that, they all fall under the cost of production. The person that mentioned weather conditions, somebody that mentioned climate is still very key. It affects, especially season. So we can have it concurrently. So in this material now, let me include season. Then season, we have then climatic season, then climate. So thanks. We also have level of technology. Now there are some other things that are included here. So if you are jotting, just quickly note that, for instance, some people that said some other things, there are ways that you can try to justify all these factors. But I put in prevailing circumstances or situation on ground. So what can influence supply? It simply means what is happening maybe in the economy at a point in time. So what could be happening could be because a people are deviating towards a certain, when we say what is vibing, what is in vogue, what are people demanding for? People will likely tend towards some type of commodity at a particular time. So other circumstances could include a lot of consideration. So the prevailing circumstances involve expectation of future higher prices. There will be future high. You could delay your supply till that time when you know it will fetch higher prices. Or it could be another thing, that existence of other producers too, because you know that you are not the only one producing. You may not want circumstances. You could explain it in terms of expectation, in terms of reaction to other competitors that are existing. Explain it